All right, everyone, let's get started. All right, welcome to the Seeing the Land for the Towers breakout session. Today we'll be hearing from Robert Wilson from the Bureau of Land Management and Joey Perry from the United States Forest Service. And both of these agencies have teamed up to bring you the latest on towers and land issues for network expansion. This session will focus on Towers 101 and give you the best information on how to work with these federal agencies. So without further ado, Joey and Robert.
So we kind of brought a team with us today. We have more than just a couple of us here, so Rob will introduce us.
I feel like a basketball player up here. Well, welcome, folks. We're glad you're here. And the purpose of our workshop today is to talk a little bit about the federal permitting process for Forest Service and BLM. We have a couple of sections in our workshop we're going to go over, and one of those is our laws and regulations. Then we're going to go into permitting, and we're going to go into administration of a communications use lease on public lands. Before we get started, I'd like to have everyone from the BLM and Forest Service stand up and introduce yourselves. And we'll start with Shauna from the BLM.
I'm Shauna Derbyshire. I work for the Utah State Office. I'm the program lead for communication sites on BLM land.
Sheriff Mullins, I'm a project manager for the BLM's ComSite program.
Good morning, my name is Joey Perry. I'm the National Program Manager for Communication Sites for the Forest Service.
Thank you, Joey. And I'm Rob Wilson. I'm National Project Manager for the BLM Communication Site Program. Lori, where's Lori? Hi, Lori, sorry.
I'm Lori Price, and I'm the Regional Land Special Uses Program Assistant.
Thank you, Lori. So at this time, we're going to have Shauna and Joey are going to come up, and they're going to give a state perspective for the BLM State Office and the Forest Service Regional Office. And I think to forward it, you just hit enter.
Do what?
To
Hit
forward
enter?
the slide. Yeah, let's try it. There you go.
Okay. I know that many of you have worked with the BLM before to authorize a communication site and also with the Forest Service. And today we're going to do a program overview, like Rob had mentioned. The BLM and the Forest Service, sometimes we do things a little bit different, but in the past few years we have been more on the same page, trying to make authorizations of comm sites, power lines, a little more streamlined and streamlining the process. And we will talk about laws and regulations today. I know that sometimes it seems a little cumbersome, but we are bound to follow our regulations, and sometimes we have to change or alter those regulations, and it's a very time-consuming process. We follow policy and directives that govern how we conduct business. We're going to talk about the approval process and authorization processes, the administration and compliance issues. About 1985, I believe, we changed the way we do business on the BLM, at least. I'll speak to that we used to give an authorization for every single person on the mountain. Everybody had to have their own right-of-way or comm site lease, and then we changed it so that it was less cumbersome to get your people up and running with their authorization. And I think Rob will speak a little bit to that, the changes over the years. There are national efforts that are being conducted right now where we're trying to make it easier. We know that the information highway is something that we want to accomplish. It benefits us all as a nation. We have nationwide, on BLM land, we have 1,500 sites approximately. We have 3,780 that are authorizations that are out on BLM mountaintops. It has been said that we don't have enough mountaintops for all of the folks that want to provide services. Hopefully we'll be able to make it so that more people can enjoy the service that you all provide. The number of authorizations that we have on BLM land in the state of Utah is 343, and we have approximately 50 sites in the state where we have multiple providers on the mountaintop. This is a map of the Utah communication sites. All the red dots are on BLM land, BLM administered land. And it looks like, where's Waldo? So anyway, any time that you might have any questions with regard to federal authorizations and you're dealing with BLM land, please contact any of the folks that are here today. We do have a table out front that has everybody's contact information that you'll be able to contact us and ask any questions that you might have. And I'll turn it over to the Forest Service.
So are we just hitting the button to move this over? Okay. So similar to the BLM, our program's a little bit larger. Nationwide, we have a little over 1,500 designated communication sites, and I'll take a moment just to explain that. So with the Forest Service and the BLM, we have to designate an area, and that's through our Forest Land and Resource Management Plan or a separate NEPA decision document. We've basically said this area of land is going to be set aside for communication uses. And so when I say we have 1525, those are officially designated. You will find single uses out there still where there may just be, a building and a tower that's not necessarily designated. So there's definitely more out there, but this is officially designated sites. For a number of authorizations, we have over 4,000 authorizations that we administer at those 1,500 communication sites. And in the state of Utah, we have 78 designated sites and 207 authorizations. And that covers those forests that we list down there below, those 6 national forests here in Utah. Oh, wrong button. Well, that's not quite what you guys wanted me to do probably, right? There we go. So here's a map that's just showing, again, the designated sites for the Forest Service. Pretty straightforward. I just wanted to explain a little bit about our organization. I know a lot of times we get questions about, who do we contact, to get, questions answered or applications processed. So, of course, we have our chief that sits in the Washington office in D.C. That is my staff. That's where I work. We have a regional office, which is your regional forester. We have 9 regions across the country. The regional office is where you're going to find Lori Price and Melissa Hurst. Her name was listed on there. She wasn't able to join us today, but that's their region is Region 4, and it's Utah and Southern Idaho and Nevada. Western Wyoming. See, I knew you guys could help me. So they cover that whole area. So if you had a particular national forest that you were trying to contact within that region, you could reach out to Lori or to Melissa or myself, and we could help you get the contact that you need. National forests and grasslands, 154 national forests that we cover, 20 grasslands, It's your forest supervisor and your realty specialist. It's going to be a lot of the people that you're working with day to day. So when you're applying for a communication site or you're trying to get, something resolved, you're going to be working with those folks. And then we have ranger districts. And that's your district ranger, again, your realty specialist, or something else that you may hear with the Forest Service's special uses administrator. Those all are the folks that you're going to be working with for communication sites. And I think that was, BLM. You guys are a little bit different?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
So BLM's organization is, of course, the Washington office back in D.C., the state offices, and Shauna works for the state office. She's the communication site program lead for the state office. Then we break it out into district offices, and then we have field offices. And Shauna, I think we have 10 field offices in Utah? 11. Does that include Hanksville?
Grand Staircase.
That's right. So there's 11 field offices, and those field offices work under a district office. And I think we have, 5 districts? 4 in Utah? Somewhere around there, 4 or 5. And then they all work directly under the state office. And again, Shauna's your communications project manager lead for the state office of Utah. As Shauna mentioned, BLM and Forest Service have been working together since the 90s, I believe. And we have a shared program, meaning that Forest Service and BLM, our communications programs, we try to have them consistent and work together for our customers. So there's a very similar process for both agencies. In 1996, BLM and Forest Service adopted joint policies, and the BLM revised their communications use right-of-way regulations. Forest Service adopted those regulations. Those were a result of the Telecommunication Act and the executive order, presidential executive order, and both of those pretty much mandated that federal agencies work to expedite telecommunication uses on public lands. So we revised our regulations. We developed a rental calculation, our rental worksheet with our rental rates. Prior to that, all uses were appraised separately. If anybody's ever gone through an appraisal, it takes a long time. Plus, it opened up the door for a lot of appeals of the local offices in terms of those rental determinations. So BLM and Forest Service adopted a rental schedule. It's on our website. We're going to show you the links to those. And those are the rental amounts that the users on the mountaintops pay every year. We streamlined administration. We developed a single authorization for each facility. We actually developed a lease, which allowed for subleasing of occupant uses, meaning that if you had an occupant use or you are an occupant within a holder's building and on their tower, you no longer were required to get an authorization. As Shauna said prior to that, every radio on the mountaintop of Forest Service and BLM required its own authorization. So BLM and Forest Service responded to the presidential executive order and the Telecommunication Act by initiating subleasing for our communications use lease document. So BLM and Forest Service, we both share a very similar lease document. When you look at a BLM lease document for communications use and a Forest Service lease document, they're very similar. We also adopted very similar terminology and requirements. In our regulations, we list definitions of types of uses, for example. Those are the same for Forest Service and BLM. And again, we have an identical rental schedule, so the fees paid on BLM and Forest Service are identical based on the population served. We apply the same rental rules and reporting requirements for the holders each year when they submit their inventory sheets of the uses. They're the same. So basically, just a little overview before we get started in the process. We thought it would be good just to talk about a few of the laws that BLM and Forest Service are mandated to follow. FLPMA, the Federal Land Management Policy Act, applies for both agencies. Regulations for BLM is 43 CFR Part 2800 General, and for comm sites it's 43 CFR 2806 Part 30 and beyond. For the forest, it's 36 CFR Part 251 Subpart B for special uses. Directives, BLM has developed various directives in IMs, which are information memorandums and information bulletins that are designed to give our folks in the field guidance on how to follow the regulations and the process. Forest Service has directed Forest Service FSM 2700, as you can see, FSH 2709 Part 11, and Chapter 30 and 90. Joey, would be really afterwards if you'd like to talk to us about those, and we can explain a little more about those. So these are the basic components of the agency policy. You can see they're identical. Communication sites must be designated in resource management plans. As Joey mentioned, when we have multiple use mountaintops with various users up there, we develop a management plan on how that site will be managed. For example, we could designate those for low power only if it's private mobile radio users, states, counties, federal agencies operating for health and safety, commercial mobile or private mobile radio for, say, Rocky Mountain Power. We can protect those by designating those low power. We strongly encourage co-location. Because we developed subleasing, we strongly encourage that new users on a mountaintop work with the existing users to try to find room on their tower and inside their buildings. This expedites the process tremendously and can get folks up and running in a timely manner. Cost recovery processing, again, you can see those are the same for both agencies. Single authorization for each facility. No authorization for each no authorization for occupants to locate in and on the federal facilities. Again, we've given subleasing rights in our lease. Standardized holder inventory form and requirements, so all holders pay the same use fees, depending on the type of use that a holder is operating. We have the national rental fee schedule for both agencies, and the communications use lease is assignable, meaning that one company can sell their assets and the agencies can assign those through the submittal of an application, a standard form SF-299 application. We're going to move into the approval and authorization process. I think most of you folks here, this is what you came to hear. How does BLM and Forest Service approve an application for a communications use? So with that, I'd like to introduce Sheridan Mullins coming up.
Any questions up to this point in the conversation? We're moving through this kind of quick, time's short, so if you have any questions you want to throw out, please let us know. I'm going to spend the next few minutes on the application and permitting process. For those of you that have been through it, I've heard from industry sometimes it feels like that full body cramp that Mr. Lawrence described as part of the Ironmans. But I believe through clear communication we can start to clear some of this up and provide you guys with some tips and hints on how to make the process go more smoothly. I think as you prepare to head into work with either the BLM or the Forest Service, it helps to understand the basic policy and mission of that agency. Some of these are general agency-wide, and some of these are boiled down to the ComSite program specifically, but everything that we authorize on these public lands have to be in conformance with the existing resource management plans that exist. Now, there is a caveat there. It's possible to amend plans, but I don't want to get into that, and I certainly can't encourage anybody to go that direction. That's an extremely painful process, expensive and time-consuming. the basic provision to protect federal lands and resources, to facilitate orderly development of the communication sites. And I'm going to say 95 some odd % of the sites that both the BLM and Forest Service manage are on mountaintops. And by the very nature, there's a finite amount of space available for location of telecommunication equipment. So there's a lot of effort giving to maximize the space that exists there. Safety and preserving the high quality communication environment, keeping ground noise to a minimum is given a lot of deference. So the next couple of slides are websites. There are a lot of resources provided online. Rather than jot those down, I think if you just Google obtaining a right-of-way on public lands, you'll come up with a several-page document that'll walk you step by step through the application process. Go ahead, Sean.
Just wanted to let you know that out on the table for the BLM and Forest Service, those websites are on one of the handouts, so you don't have to run it all down.
Thank you. Forest Service has almost an identical brochure, just used for information purposes for new applicants that haven't been through the process. Some additional resources. We have a web page specifically for our communication site program, the web link there. The general right-of-way website for the BLM and the BLM directory for contact. The BLM directory is great. If you're going into a field office, you know the field office that has jurisdiction over the area that you're going to be dealing with. Typically for what you folks are going to be doing, I encourage you to get hold of the realty specialist for BLM. For Forest Service, it'll be the realty/special uses folks that you want to coordinate with. And you can find their name on this website. Some handy websites for the Forest Service. Same scenarios, ComSite specific up top, some information on the application process, and then contacts. We really stress the importance and need of a pre-application meeting. My experience has been this really has the ability to save you folks time and money, to inform you early in the process of challenges that you may come up against if you have an area that you know you want to go into to locate a site. A simple sit down and conversation with the appropriate office can provide you a lot of information. Again, I encourage you to schedule this with the realty folks at that office. Let them know ahead of time the basic conversation that you want to have. The basic area, and they can come prepared with some information to share with you. It's informal at this point, but I've seen it start to steer people in the right direction. For instance, if you have a proposal that's in a wilderness area, for instance, it has no chance of succeeding, and if you don't know that much about the federal process, that conversation can save you time and money. We stress with our folks internally, that's really where the BLM and the Forest Service offices need to be communicating with you what to expect in the process. They need to inform you about the application fees, the potential resource challenges that you may run into, and just a general overall conversation of what to expect. So a completed SF-299 for both agencies is the official beginning of the application process. It's highly encouraged and required by a lot of offices that a plan of development accompany an SF-299. How many of you have been through the application process? So you're aware that the SF-299 is brief. I would describe it that way. There's not a lot of room for information. You put the basics on that standard form. From there, all the details of your proposal needs to go into a plan of development. The BLM has an outline of just things to consider when you're filling out a plan of development online under those websites that we listed. You can Google that and it'll pop up. You need to arm the folks in these offices with the information necessary to process the application. And what we see, and a lot of the complaint from the industry is the applications come into the office, they go into a black hole, and they're never seen again. Some truth to that. When they finally do rise to the top of the pile to be processed, if they come into an application that has partial or incomplete information, it's likely to go right to the bottom of the pile again. So if you submit these from the beginning, complete with all the information necessary, you have better odds of getting something out the back end. Some other things that need to be considered, adequate maps, those vary in quality. We see a fair amount of pencil, paper, crayon quality maps. It helps to have a good map with a legal description or a lat-long description of exactly where you want to be. Engineered drawings go a long way, especially if you're constructing a new tower and a new building. Engineered drawings really help, and the legal description. Another form you're going to hear a fair amount about in this process is a communication site technical data form. And we have a copy of that if anybody wants to see it, but essentially it's all the same information that's on your FCC license. And what we do is route that around to the existing users on site to give everybody an opportunity to speak up if they think there's going to be interference. And that's a requirement in both agencies' process that be routed around, and everybody up on site have about 30 days to comment on it. So from the BLM specific standpoint, strongly encourage pre-application meeting, and then a completed SF 299 and a plan of development is the official beginning of the process. Forest Service has an extra step in there. The 299 completed with adequate information, and then they run it through an internal screening process. They have 14 criteria that they put up against your application to see whether or not it'll be accepted as a proposal. Anything you want to add to that?
Just that it comes in and it's considered a proposal, and then once it does pass the screening criteria, then we accept it as a formal application. So just flip off the terms there.
Okay. After the application's been submitted, been determined to be complete and adequate, they're going to start talking to you about the cost recovery. Both agencies have two primary cost recovery terms that you're going to hear: processing and monitoring. Processing is typically paid at the time the application is submitted or soon thereafter. That covers the agency's time and effort to process that application to the permitting stage. After the application, assuming the application is permitted and a lease or authorization is issued, then they'll start talking to you about monitoring fees. That's on a sliding scale. It's done based on the hours the agency expects to spend on the proposal. Category 4 is up to 50 hours of time spent on the project, and I think it's 1,140. It's in the 1,000 range for the cost recovery. Those schedules are also online. Have that conversation with the realty folks in the pre-application meeting. After they have an idea of what your proposal is, start asking them what they think that the cost recovery fees are going to be associated with that project, so there's no surprises. Some of the major factors that go into the amount of time that an agency has to spend on these proposals, NEPA is the big one. I mean, it's a law that none of the agencies have an option as to whether they go through the NEPA process. It's required. NEPA kicks in a lot of, I guess you could call them sub-laws or other resource considerations that need to be factored in. Visual resources comes into play with wireless uses a lot. Tribal consultation is required by several different laws that exist. Wow, and I'm getting a 5-minute sign and I'm not even a fourth of the way through. So stop me if you guys want to talk about anything specific. There are some customer use standards that are in place. We don't want this to be a black hole. We work with our folks a lot to help educate them that they need to get back with you guys on a proposal. We call it the 29-day letter, and the gist of it is, if they can't process the application within 60 days, they need to notify you within 30 days as to when the office can get to that proposal. I talked about the cost recovery fees a little bit. It is what it is. The final fee you're going to run into is an annual rental fee. The theory is that it's at fair market value. Right now, it's well below. We go off of a fee schedule that's increased annually based on the consumer price index. The average increase per year has been in the 1% to 2% range. It's out of date. It's nowhere near market value. So BLM and Forest Service, no, let me take that back. BLM uses two forms to authorize communication sites. One is a 2800-18 lease form. The main thing you need to keep in mind with those two forms is a lease inherently provides subleasing rights. So you can locate another company in your building and on your tower without additional approval from the agency. And I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more to talk about, but. What's that? Any questions?
Well, I had to kind of check all your 60 days. No way. I mean, and it's a world of difference between Forest Service and BLM. To give you some extremes, exact same situation. Develop mountaintop, develop ComSite, extra sites for new tenants at ComSite, part of the development. None of the other occupants on either site had an issue. Forest Service, literally, less than a month, permit was done. We're building. BLM, 9 years later.
Wow.
9 years.
Let's talk more
I
about.
wish the BLM would eliminate this thing called the slow walk. Okay? That's a policy I really dislike.
The slow walk.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a written policy.
That is a file cabinet rule.
Let's talk. Yeah, definitely talk. Do you want to do administration?
You tell me.
Let folks know we have a booth.
Yeah, we're gonna be out front all day today, so we're here all day, so you guys can feel free to stop by at any time and talk with us about that.
I'm just glad the Forest Service actually processed something, because,
Forest Service is wonderful.
say that again, no.
Love that US Department of Agriculture. They're here to help.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, administration and compliance, and we were sitting at dinner last night, and we had this discussion, and I understand it's very important for you guys to get online and operating, so your things are getting the approval process, through the approval process and getting that lease and moving on. Where it comes to us, we also want to make sure long-term the administration is being taken care of, and so it's not always a fun thing for you guys, but it's really important for us. So again, what does your lease provide you? It's the right to construct, operate, maintain your improvements out there. Again, the right to rent space in or on your facility without additional authorization, and ability to assign your lease. So the idea was to make that process a little bit easier for you, so you have that ability. Anytime you're going to make a change to your facility, this is really important, that you file an application, amended application to the Forest Service or to the BLM to make those changes. Recently, some of the things we find is where people have modified a tower without our authorization. So that's a problem for us. So anytime you're going to make any change to what is listed on your lease document, whether it's a building expansion, a tower modification, or maybe you want to install a generator, this is where you would be coming to us, and we would be doing a lease amendment to authorize you to do that. Of course, it is subject to cost recovery, but it's pretty just basic, some of the basic stuff that you need to do. Sorry, you guys, we're zipping through this. The assignments. So again, your lease is assignable. We would always encourage our offices to complete an inspection before approving that assignment. There's also, the prospective purchaser needs to submit a 299. We need to make sure that's somebody that we want to do business with, that we think that they're technically and financially capable of operating this facility and maintaining it, and also removing it eventually. If we make that determination, then, again, once we get a bill of sale or assignment and assumption agreement, we're happy to assign that lease. So it's a fairly simple process. I say that, but I know a lot of offices struggle to do this, but it's also hard to keep up with your companies. You guys are changing, there's a variety of transactions going on, and it's hard for us to keep up with that. So it's just, I think, to emphasize more, like what Sherrod said, is communication with your local office is so important, not only from the application, but on through when you have your authorization and maintaining that. Okay, kind of went over that. Proof of ownership, we can skip through that. Just talk a little bit about the communication site management plan. So when we say that you are authorized to sublease space in your facilities without further authorization from the Forest Service or the BLM, there's two things that use must do. It must comply or be consistent with the communication site management plan, and it has to be compatible with all other users. And that's where that technical coordination comes in. So I encourage you, if you guys have an authorization on federal lands, that you make sure you have a copy of this communication site management plan. It's really important. It covers the day-to-day administration. It's kind of the expectations of how we expect you to operate at this site, what you can expect from us. It's a really critical management tool for the Forest Service. I will say not all of our sites have communication site management plans, but they are required to. So hopefully, it's something that we work on nationally. But again, the day-to-day direction, it also delineates the types of uses that are appropriate at the site, and that's where Rob mentioned we want to protect the existing uses. So if we have low power uses there, we don't want an FM broadcaster to come in. So we're going to designate something as low power non-broadcast. And the idea is to protect the existing users. Any questions on the comp site management plan? Anybody seen one of those? Are you guys familiar? No? No hands? So just some important points to remember. Again, read the terms and conditions of your authorization carefully. Don't just throw it in the file cabinet once it's signed and go out and construct. Make sure you're understanding everything that's in there. Understand when a change in your facility requires an amendment. Submit your annual inventory form. Are any of you familiar with that? Yes, okay. So that is who's in your facility as of September 30th. You report to us. That's due October 15th, and we base your following year bill off of that. So it's really important to us that you accurately report your uses on time and that we bill you on time. Keep your contact information current with the agency, and then basically understand that the Forest Service and BLM are very different when it comes to we don't do a ground-based lease. So I understand with private industry it's a lot different. So know that there is a significant difference between private and Forest Service and BLM. Okay, so that was like, quick. Questions? Tara, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. So I know in AT&T's experience working with both BLM and Forest Service that we have really enjoyed the process and your coordination with each other as well. We wish that national parks would coordinate with you, but you know what I think about that. But my question is, related to staffing. I know that a lot of your processing time issues are because of the budgets that you're given, from DC to do your job. So I'm wondering if you've seen any progress or movement in terms of your own staffing budgets to process these applications.
No, I have not. Appropriations continue to go down, and, we just continue to try to do what we can, but we have a lot of offices that, as you know, we don't fill positions when people leave, and it is definitely a challenge for our agencies. And we are looking at, developing kind of like a strike team concept where we could have teams travel around the country if we have, particular areas that are seeing an increase in workload, that we could give them some support. So we are exploring those options. So, Bjorn, anything to add to that, Rob?
I don't.